Episode 9 of the PressBox Party. Dave Vance hanging out with Scott Reiss, who is not only our guest, he is our guest host. For this is going to be a short version. We're just going to quickly preview this weekend's NFL matchup. Scott is well positioned to do that because he is the sports director at KCTV in Kansas City, which is the CBS affiliate. He's been doing the pre and post game shows for the Kansas City Chiefs all season long. He saw the Chiefs play the Bengals earlier this season, a game that Cincinnati won. And if we have time, we'll also talk a little bit about the NFC Championship matchup between the Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers, because Scott, prior to going to Kansas City, spent 10 years as the radio voice of the Stanford Cardinal, and that included the time when Christian McCaffrey was playing for the Cardinals. So he knows Christian quite well, and we'll get into that, Scott. We're going to have you on the podcast at a later time. You and I have a lot of history. We've known each other almost 30 years. We've worked in a tiny market together and a very big market together, and have remained friends. We occasionally work together on baseball cards on the side, but that's a whole nother story. So let's get right to it. Your initial thoughts on the rematch between the Bengals and the Chiefs. The Bengals beat Kansas City earlier this season. Are people in Kansas City worried that that's going to happen again?
Well, I think that when you consider it wasn't just the Bengals beating the Chiefs this season, it's that the Bengals have beaten the Chiefs 3 times in the last 13 months.
Well,
so when you add that all up, I don't know how you can't be at least a little bit concerned. And then you throw in Patrick Mahomes' ankle and the uncertainty there. There's a reason that the line started with Kansas City by a couple points, and then it went to Cincinnati by a couple of points, and now it's back to Kansas City, last I checked, by a point. This is basically a pick 'em. It's a coin flip. But I will tell you, if anybody thinks the Bengals are still a fluke, they haven't been paying attention. This team beat the bejeebers out of the Bills last week in Buffalo, and it was no accident. If Cincinnati wins this game, I think we can say they're the best team in the AFC, right? And I know that's hard for Chiefs fans to really wrap their collective brain around because, look, 5 straight AFC championships, and everybody points to Kansas City as the Super Bowl favorite, and they are. But if Cincinnati wins this game, that's a pretty good sample size, right? I mean, 4 wins over the same team in it'll be 14 months. So we'll see how it plays out. And again, obviously the Mahomes ankle situation will, I think, be a factor in this game. Question is how much of a factor? Nobody really knows. But I guess that's a roundabout way of saying, Dave, that no outcome short of a blowout either way will surprise me on Sunday.
You bring up Mahomes, you bring up the Bengals, and you think about Joe Burrow, and I'm thinking about where Joe Burrow was. I mean, it was just a few years ago, he won the national championship in college, and then first year in the NFL gets hurt, and then now he's on the verge of going to 2 straight Super Bowls. So it's been quite a start for his career. Mahomes obviously has been fantastic in his career as well. When both are healthy, is there a debate? I mean, has Burrow closed the gap a little bit to the point where you'd say, I mean, I think everybody would still say a healthy Mahomes they would take, but has Burrow closed that gap?
Has he closed the gap? 100%, right? I mean, there's no debating that he has closed the gap. Now, is Mahomes still the best quarterback in the NFL? Would you take him if you could take any QB? I would. I would still take Mahomes over Burrow. But I promise you, Dave, the question you just asked, if Cincinnati wins on Sunday, will be the most asked and debated question in the offseason, right? Who's the best quarterback in the NFL? Because again, if Burrow goes 4-0 against Mahomes, no pun intended, you may not have a leg to stand on. Now, again, I couch that by saying I still think that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. But man, Burrow has been the Chiefs' kryptonite to this point, and if it happens again, I can only imagine the backlash.
I'm curious, were Chiefs fans rooting for Cincinnati? I mean, and I say that because clearly if the Bills win, the game's in Atlanta, and you don't know what's going to happen with that, but you also are picking your poison. As you said, the Bengals have proven they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right. Well, and look, the Bills beat them too this year.
Right. So, yeah, that's true.
Again, pick your poison. I think that the sane answer has to be yes, Chiefs fans were rooting for Cincinnati strictly because of the reason you alluded to, because you would rather play the Bengals here than the Bills on a neutral site and have to travel and all that. Now, that said, if it was a question of taking the venue out of it and who would you rather play, you'd probably get 50-50 if you polled Chiefs fans. So I don't know the answer. Certainly in hindsight, it looks like Cincinnati's tougher than Buffalo. But again, on any given day, I don't know that that's necessarily true.
I'm sure the Chiefs are not letting you in to watch practice, so we have to go with what they're saying publicly about Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody doubts that he'll be out there, but what are your expectations of what he can bring to the table being banged up?
It really concerns me. Now, I will say, as the week goes on, the reports are good. What we have seen, what little we have seen video wise from the stretching portion of practice, he seems to be moving around perfectly fine. He's not in a boot at any point in time. He's not walking with a limp. So if you believe the narrative from inside the Chiefs camp, he's doing pretty well. Now, where I come from, and as a guy who covered the NBA for 10 years, I imagine where you come from, high ankle sprains are not a 2-hour injury. They're a 4-week injury. So the fact that he even came back and played last Saturday to me was kind of miraculous. And the idea that he will be anywhere close to 100% this Sunday seems highly unlikely, again, given what I know about high ankle sprain. I'm not a doctor, but I've seen a whole lot of them. So I do believe that the ankle will still be a factor. And when you consider Mahomes' game, he is not Josh Allen. He's not Jalen Hurts. He's not a guy who's going to rush for 75 yards in a game. But everything that makes him great is predicated on his ability to extend plays, to feel and escape pressure. The subtleties that he exhibits in the pocket are really one of a kind in the NFL, in and out of the pocket, right? And if he's hobbled even a little bit, those quick twitch decisions don't translate to body movement, right? And that's just so much of what makes him great, is those millisecond decisions and executions when he is under duress, and the ability to not only avoid negative plays, but to turn negative plays into hugely positive plays. If he can't do that, if he's a pocket quarterback, he's good, but he's not magical. So I think, to me, this is a big deal.
And listen, I mean, I don't think anybody out there would say, "Hey, I wouldn't love to have the weapons that Patrick Mahomes has," but you give a healthy Joe Burrow along with the weapons that he brings, and suddenly, maybe the passing game is in favor of Cincinnati given the injury.
The Bengals have the best trio of wide receivers in the NFL. So
they don't have Travis Kelce.
But they don't have Travis Kelce, right? Obviously, if you throw the tight end, it changes the narrative. And it's an interesting debate, right? Would you rather have? Look, Hayden Hurst has played well. He scored a big touchdown against Buffalo. So no disrespect to him, but if you include the tight end core, would you rather have the Chiefs' weapons or the Bengals? Probably still the Bengals, right, top to bottom. So now, and you could argue that there are a lot of areas on the field where you would say I would take Cincinnati's XYZ over Kansas City's. The quarterback is supposed to be the mitigating factor. Burrow is great, and he has kind of reached that, dare I say, elite level in the NFL. Mahomes is still the guy, right? He is still the best of the best, and quarterback's the most important position on the field. So that is where people still give the Chiefs the edge, albeit a slight one. But it's interesting. It's really fascinating, and you cannot underestimate how good those Bengals receivers are, and just and part of it is the Chase Burrow relationship going back to LSU, but just they are so in sync, man. It's really, if you have no skin in the game, just to watch from a pure aesthetic standpoint, it's really fun to watch.
This going to be a high scoring game, or is there going to be, I feel like this one's shaping up to see a lot of points, but
I think so too. I think that, look, the Chiefs coaching staff, I mean, Andy Reid is as good as it gets, and they will scheme around the ankle as well as they possibly can. They will put the offense in a position to succeed. The Chiefs have been fairly proficient the second half of the season in running the football with Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, look, you're getting a 7th-round rookie who's become your main guy, and obviously everybody knows what Jerick McKinnon's done with all the touchdowns, and 9 touchdowns in 6 games to end the season. So they're getting a lot of production out of that running back position very quietly. So if they have to lean on those guys a little bit more, I think that's okay. And I think the coaching staff will game plan it. And that Cincinnati, they've been able to put up points against this Chiefs defense. So I agree with you. I think that this is a game where, we could see some fireworks, and it'll be fun to watch.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left. So before I transition to San Francisco, I'm going to ask you, I someone who hosted pre- and post-game shows in a local market for the channel that carried the games in Green Bay, I know that, you're not often that you want to pick against your team, but I need the completely unfiltered Scott Reiss prediction for this game. Who's going to the Super Bowl?
You know, the unfiltered Scott Reiss does not have a strong feeling one way or the other. If Mahomes were 100%, I would say the Chiefs are going to win the game, because I believe you can only beat a team by 3 points so many times in a row. Or the bounce of the ball, a little bit of luck here or there, something goes the other way. The Chiefs had chances to win those games. Mahomes made uncharacteristic mistakes that I don't think he would make this time around. So you give me Mahomes at 100%, I'm taking the Chiefs. I don't know what percentage we're talking about. You know, is it enough to go the other way? Let's just say that as a guy who has a vested interest now in the Chiefs, this game scares me an awful lot, because it would not surprise me to see the Bengals come in here and pull the very, very mild upset, according to Vegas.
That is as diplomatic an answer as you could possibly give. Well played.
I'm new in the market, man. I can't piss people off yet.
That's true. All right. Well, you're not in the Bay Area anymore. You're not covering Stanford anymore. But I'm not wanting you really necessarily to break down the Eagles and the Niners. But I do want you to tell me a little bit about Christian McCaffrey. You got a chance to know him. You got a chance to see him have an outstanding career at Stanford. And are you surprised at all at how much of an impact he made coming over in the trade and really just changed the 49ers season? They've not lost since he's become a starter on this team.
I'm not surprised about that. I will say that as much as Christian McCaffrey was the best college football player that I have ever watched in person, you know, repeatedly, I mean, without question, and Andrew Luck, who I hold in about as high as regard as you could possibly, I still would say McCaffrey was the best player that I've seen, and certainly got robbed of the Heisman Trophy, but that's another discussion for another day. But that said, I was surprised that he was as otherworldly good as an NFL player as he, you know, proved to be right out of the chute, right? I expected him to be a good pro. I didn't expect him to be an MVP caliber pro, which is what we got. But once we saw it for, 3-4 years in Carolina, it certainly didn't surprise me to see him translate that to San Francisco. You pair him with Kyle Shanahan, and it's dynamic, right? I mean, you have, maybe, again, the word is dynamic, the most dynamic running back in the NFL. And, with the mad genius that is Kyle Shanahan, and the scheming and the play calling and everything else. So I think it's a marriage made in heaven. It's a perfect fit. I love the Niners having not only McCaffrey, but a healthy Elijah Mitchell, who, let's not forget, was a pretty darn good running back as the starter. Now he's your number 2. Like, are you kidding me? So they can just do so many things with those guys. And obviously, Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and the weapons they have on the outside. It's really fun to watch the Niners and what they've become, and to have seen them evolve in the second half of the season, not only with McCaffrey, but obviously with Brock Purdy as well.
Well, and I was just going to ask you that, knowing what you know about McCaffrey, and, he comes in midseason. It's not like he's been there the whole time, but what kind of impact do you think he's had off the field in the locker room, and especially with a young guy like Brock Purdy, who just kind of got put into the fire?
Yeah, I mean, McCaffrey is the type of guy whose passion for the game is infectious. He is he's the least phony person you will find, right? I mean, he grew up around the game. Obviously, his dad, longtime NFL player. His mom was a, terrific soccer player. I mean, this is like freakish, mutant athletic genes in their family. And not only does he have all the gifts physically, but he has it up here, and he has the drive and all the X factors in terms of the passion and the emotion. So he's really, if you're going to draw up a football player, he's pretty close to it. And that is something that rubs off on young players in the locker room. So I have no doubt that he has had a legitimate impact on guys like Brock Purdy. And certainly if you're Brock Purdy and you see 23 standing behind you, and you know that if you've got to check down, there may not be a better guy on the planet to check down to. So, that's got to make him feel pretty good as well.
All right. Final question for Scott. You don't have a local tie, as I said. So listen, Philly's had a hell of a year, man. And I got to admit, I haven't watched a ton of the Eagles this season, and I thought very foolishly that the Giants being in their division and seeing them for a third time, and the Giants made it tough on them in the regular season finale. I thought at the very least that game was going to be a tough battle for Philly to be able to get past. They absolutely just annihilated Philadelphia, annihilated the Giants. What's your take on the game? Who's winning this NFC Championship game?
First of all, so the answer to me is Philly. Part of it is the home field. I think that's a big deal, but part of it is because I think the Eagles are just that much better than the 49ers. And, part of that calculus is, as great as Brock Purdy has been, every game in the playoffs is still the first time he's experienced this. And yeah, he was impressive last week. That was at home. Now you got to be in Philadelphia, which I'm told is not kind as an atmosphere for players, right? Jalen Hurts is playing at an MVP level. So impressive, obviously, what he could do with his legs and his arm. A.J. Brown is a big reason why they're where they are, because they already have the pieces in place on the defensive side. They have the quarterback who's evolved. But man, now you pair A.J. Brown with Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, just the weapons. There's no weakness on this Philly team. Now, there's not much of a weakness on the 49ers either. So I don't think Philly beats them. They're not going to do what they did to the Giants last week. But I do think the Eagles are that much better. They have home field. I think they win the game.
Well, so it's going to be the Super Bowl 57 is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles, according to blank, by Scott Reiss.
That's correct. Exactly. So either maybe you and I'll be hanging out in Phoenix in 2 weeks.
Well, listen, my good friend and mentor Dan Horde is the radio play-by-play voice of the Bengals, and so if the Bengals win, I'll be able to reconnect with him. If the Chiefs win, I'll be able to reconnect with you, because I'm going to be out there doing shows along with Jessica Taylor for the No Filter Network. We're going to have the DJ Experience Monday through Friday out there from 9 to 11 Arizona time. So you're going to have to make an appearance on that show, by the way, if you do end up coming out.
No problem. I'll even give you more than 15 minutes.
All right. Well, that's good. All right. Well, Scott. Yeah. Well, no. We'll see. If I got Jerry Rice waiting, I might. You might get bumped. But anyway. All right. Well, by the way, shout out to Rockin' Reiss, who's watching our show. Could that possibly be one of your kids?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, they're spelling the Reiss differently anyway.
I was going to say, if it's the same spelling, I'd be suspicious. But no, I'm pretty sure my kids are accounted for, and they are not on this broadcast.
Okay. Well, we appreciate Rockin' Reiss checking it out. Anybody who's watching it on the replay, we appreciate that. Anybody who's listening to it on the audio side, we appreciate that. Make sure you're checking us out every week. You can follow us at PressBox_party on Twitter, also on Instagram, and you can subscribe here on No Filter. You can follow us. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can download the audio version of the podcast, of course, on Apple, Spotify, all the places you get the podcast. So, Scott, you're super famous now. You made it. You're on the PressBox party. You're going to be all over the place.
Awesome, man. I can retire now. I can retire happy.
There you go. All right, my friend. Enjoy championship weekend, and we'll talk soon. Hopefully, I'll see you in Arizona.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care. Peace.